Have you ever heard the term cosigner when talking about renting an apartment or house? If so, you might be wondering what exactly a cosigner is and why landlords often require one. In this video, we'll break down the concept of a cosigner on a lease, explain why they're important, and help you understand when you might need one. Whether you're a first-time renter or just curious about the process, this guide will walk you through everything you need to know about cosigners and how they can impact your rental experience. A cosigner is someone who signs a lease agreement along with the primary tenant. This person agrees to take on legal responsibility for the lease if the tenant cannot pay rent or fulfill other obligations. Essentially, a cosigner acts as a safety net for the landlord, providing extra assurance that the rent will be paid on time. Cosigners are often parents, relatives, or close friends who have a stronger financial background than the primary tenant. Their involvement can make it easier for someone with limited credit or income to secure a rental property. Landlords want to minimize their risk when renting out a property. If a potential tenant has little or no credit history, low income, or a spotty rental record, landlords may ask for a cosigner. This gives them peace of mind, knowing that if the tenant fails to pay rent or causes damage, the cosigner is legally obligated to cover those costs. For landlords, having a cosigner is like having an insurance policy against financial loss. This requirement is especially common for students, young professionals, or anyone new to renting. When someone agrees to be a cosigner, they sign the lease along with the tenant. This means they are equally responsible for all the terms of the lease, including paying rent, covering damages, and following property rules. If the tenant misses a payment or breaks the lease, the landlord can legally pursue the cosigner for any unpaid amounts. Cosigners usually need to provide proof of income, credit history, and identification to qualify. The process is similar to applying for the lease itself, but with the added responsibility of guaranteeing someone else's obligations. Not just anyone can be a cosigner. Landlords typically require cosigners to have a strong credit history, stable income, and sometimes even home ownership. Most often, cosigners are parents, guardians, or close relatives. But trusted friends or mentors can also fill this role. The key is that the cosigner must be financially capable of covering the rent if the tenant cannot. Landlords may run background and credit checks on cosigners to ensure they meet the necessary criteria before approving the lease. You might hear the terms cosigner and guarantor used interchangeably, but there are subtle differences. A cosigner is usually listed on the lease and shares equal responsibility for all lease terms. A guarantor, on the other hand, may only be responsible for rent payments if the tenant defaults. The exact definitions can vary by landlord or region, so it's important to clarify the role before signing any documents. Both roles, however, provide landlords with added security when renting to higher-risk tenants. A cosigner is typically needed when a tenant doesn't meet the landlord's financial or credit requirements. This could be due to a lack of rental history, insufficient income, or a low credit score. Students, recent graduates, or individuals starting a new job often need cosigners. If you're applying for a rental and the landlord expresses concern about your application, offering a cosigner can strengthen your chances of approval. It's a practical solution for overcoming financial barriers in the rental process. Being a cosigner is a serious commitment. If the tenant fails to pay rent, damages the property, or breaks the lease, the cosigner is legally responsible for covering those costs. This can include unpaid rent, repair bills, or even legal fees. Cosigners should fully understand the risks before agreeing to sign. It's important to have open communication with the tenant and to trust that they will uphold their end of the agreement. Otherwise, the cosigner could face significant financial consequences. Co-signing a lease comes with real risks. If the tenant defaults, the cosigner's credit score can be negatively affected, and they may be pursued for payment by the landlord or even taken to court. This financial obligation can last for the entire duration of the lease, and sometimes beyond if there are outstanding debts. Before agreeing to co-sign, it's important to consider your own financial stability and willingness to take on this responsibility. Always read the lease carefully and understand all terms involved. Having a cosigner can be a huge advantage for tenants who might not otherwise qualify for a lease. With a cosigner, tenants can access better rental options, negotiate more favorable terms, and build a positive rental history. This arrangement can also help tenants establish or improve their credit over time, as long as they make payments on time and follow the lease terms. For many, a cosigner is the key to securing a safe and comfortable place to live. Landlords benefit from cosigners because it reduces their financial risk. With a cosigner, landlords have an additional party to hold accountable if the tenant fails to pay rent or causes damage. This can make landlords more willing to rent to individuals with less than perfect credit or limited income. It also helps landlords fill vacancies faster, knowing they have extra security in place. Overall, cosigners create a win-win situation for both landlords and tenants. There are several situations where a cosigner is commonly needed. For example, college students moving into their first apartment often need a parent to cosign. Recent graduates starting a new job may not have enough income or credit history. People with past credit issues, such as bankruptcy or eviction, may also require a cosigner to secure housing. In each case, the cosigner's financial stability helps reassure landlords and makes the rental process smoother. Asking someone to be your cosigner is a big request. It's important to be honest about your financial situation and explain why you need their help. Be clear about the responsibilities involved and reassure them of your commitment to paying rent on time. Provide all necessary information, such as the lease terms and your budget, so they can make an informed decision. Remember, co-signing is a significant favor, so approach the conversation with respect and gratitude. Before agreeing to co-sign, individuals should carefully consider their own financial situation. Ask yourself if you can afford to cover the rent if the tenant cannot. Review the lease terms and understand the full extent of your legal obligations. It's also wise to discuss expectations with the tenant and set clear boundaries. If you're uncomfortable with the risks, it's okay to decline. Co-signing is a major responsibility, and it's important to make an informed choice. When applying for a lease with a cosigner, both the tenant and cosigner must submit personal and financial information. This typically includes proof of income, credit reports, and identification. Landlords will review both parties' backgrounds to assess risk. If approved, both the tenant and cosigner sign the lease, making them legally responsible for the terms. The process is similar to a standard rental application, but involves additional paperwork and verification steps. Landlords almost always run credit checks on cosigners to ensure they have a solid financial background. A strong credit score and history of on-time payments are essential. If a cosigner has poor credit, the landlord may reject the application or request a different cosigner. This step helps landlords feel confident that the cosigner can step in if needed. It's important for cosigners to be aware that this credit inquiry may appear on their credit report. In addition to credit checks, landlords often require cosigners to meet certain income thresholds. This ensures that the cosigner can realistically cover the rent if necessary. The required income level varies, but it's common for landlords to look for a cosigner who earns at least 3 times the monthly rent. Proof of income, such as pay stubs or tax returns, is usually required. Meeting these requirements is crucial for the application to be approved. Co-signing a lease is a legally binding agreement. If the tenant defaults, the landlord can pursue the cosigner for unpaid rent, damages, or other costs. This can result in lawsuits, wage garnishment, or negative marks on the cosigner's credit report. It's essential to understand that co-signing is not just a formality, it carries real legal consequences. Consulting with a legal professional before signing can help clarify any questions or concerns. A cosigner's responsibility usually lasts for the entire duration of the lease. This means that even if the tenant moves out early or breaks the lease, the cosigner may still be liable for unpaid rent or damages. In some cases, the obligation can extend beyond the original lease term if there are outstanding debts. It's important to clarify with the landlord exactly when the cosigner's responsibility ends before signing any documents. In some situations, tenants may want to remove a cosigner from the lease. This can happen if the tenant's financial situation improves, or if the cosigner no longer wishes to be responsible. To remove a cosigner, tenants typically need to reapply and demonstrate that they now meet the landlord's requirements on their own. If approved, the landlord may issue a new lease without the cosigner. Always get any changes in writing to protect all parties involved. A cosigner release form is a document that officially removes the cosigner's legal responsibility from the lease. This form is typically signed by the landlord, tenant, and cosigner once the tenant qualifies to take over the lease independently. It's important to ensure that all parties agree and that the release is documented properly. Without a signed release form, the cosigner may still be held liable for future obligations, even after the tenant's circumstances change. Sometimes, a cosigner may be asked to guarantee a lease for multiple tenants, such as roommates. In this case, the cosigner is usually responsible for the entire rent amount, not just one tenant's share. If any tenant fails to pay, the cosigner can be held liable for the full balance. It's important for cosigners to understand the scope of their responsibility and to communicate with all tenants involved to avoid misunderstandings. In joint lease situations, all tenants and the cosigner are equally responsible for the lease terms. This means that if one tenant fails to pay, the landlord can pursue any or all parties, including the cosigner, for the full amount. Joint leases are common among roommates and can complicate the cosigner's obligations. It's important to review the lease carefully and understand how joint responsibility works before agreeing to cosign. If a tenant sublets their rental, the cosigner's responsibility usually remains in place unless the landlord agrees to release them. Subletting can introduce additional risks, as the subtenant may not be as reliable. Cosigners should be aware that they could be held liable for any issues caused by the subtenant. It's important to discuss subletting policies with the landlord and ensure all agreements are documented in writing. When a lease is renewed, the cosigner's responsibility may automatically continue unless a new agreement is made. If the tenant's financial situation has improved, they may request to remove the cosigner at renewal time. Otherwise, the cosigner remains liable for the new lease term. Always review renewal documents carefully and clarify any changes in responsibility with the landlord before signing. If a tenant is evicted for non-payment or lease violations, the cosigner can be held responsible for unpaid rent, damages, and legal fees. Evictions can have serious consequences for both the tenant and cosigner, including damage to credit and potential lawsuits. Cosigners should stay informed about the tenant's situation and address any issues early to avoid escalation. Open communication can help prevent eviction and protect everyone involved. If a tenant files for bankruptcy, the cosigner may still be held responsible for any unpaid rent or damages. Bankruptcy can complicate the legal process, but it does not automatically release the cosigner from their obligations. Landlords may pursue the cosigner for payment, and the cosigner's credit could be affected. It's important to understand the potential impact of bankruptcy before agreeing to cosign a lease. If a cosigner or tenant goes through a divorce, the legal responsibility for the lease may still remain. Divorce does not automatically remove a cosigner from the lease. Both parties should communicate with the landlord and update the lease agreement if necessary. Legal advice may be helpful in navigating these situations to ensure that all parties are protected and obligations are clear. If a cosigner passes away during the lease term, the tenant is still responsible for fulfilling the lease obligations. The landlord may seek payment from the cosigner's estate if there are outstanding debts. It's important for both tenants and cosigners to understand how death can affect the lease and to plan accordingly. Estate planning and clear communication with the landlord can help prevent complications. Some landlords require tenants or cosigners to carry renter's insurance. This insurance can help cover damages or losses that might otherwise become the cosigner's responsibility. While insurance does not eliminate the cosigner's legal obligations, it can provide an extra layer of protection. Cosigners should discuss insurance requirements with the tenant and landlord before signing the lease. If the landlord raises the rent during the lease or at renewal, the cosigner's responsibility increases as well. Cosigners should be aware that their financial obligation can change over time. It's important to review any rent increase notices and understand how they affect the lease terms. Open communication with the tenant and landlord can help avoid surprises and ensure everyone is prepared for changes. If the tenant violates the lease terms, such as having unauthorized pets or subletting without permission, the cosigner can be held responsible for any resulting costs or damages. Lease violations can lead to fines, eviction, or legal action. Cosigners should encourage tenants to follow all lease rules and stay informed about any potential issues. Preventing violations is the best way to protect both the tenant and cosigner. Good communication between the tenant and cosigner is essential. Regular check-ins can help ensure that rent is being paid on time and that there are no issues with the lease. If problems arise, addressing them early can prevent bigger financial or legal troubles down the line. Establishing trust and open dialogue makes the co-signing relationship smoother and more successful for everyone involved. Keeping thorough documentation is important for both tenants and co-signers. Save copies of the lease, payment receipts, and any correspondence with the landlord. If disputes arise, having clear records can help resolve issues quickly and protect your interests. Organization and attention to detail are key to managing the responsibilities of co-signing a lease. Since co-signing can affect your credit, it's wise to monitor your credit report regularly. This can help you spot any issues early, such as missed payments or negative marks. Many credit bureaus offer free or low-cost monitoring services. Staying proactive about your credit can help you address problems before they become serious and maintain your financial health. If finding a cosigner isn't possible, there are alternatives. Some landlords accept a larger security deposit, prepaid rent, or a guarantor service instead of a traditional cosigner. These options can help tenants secure a lease without involving friends or family. It's important to discuss alternatives with the landlord and choose the option that best fits your situation. Cosigners aren't just for residential leases. They can also be required for commercial properties. Business owners with limited credit or new companies may need a cosigner to secure a storefront or office space. The responsibilities and risks are similar, but the financial stakes can be higher. It's important to review commercial lease terms carefully and consult with legal and financial professionals before agreeing to cosign. Student housing often requires cosigners because students may not have established credit or income. Parents or guardians typically fill this role, helping students secure dorms or apartments. The process is similar to other leases, but may involve additional paperwork or requirements from the school or housing provider. Co-signers should understand the unique aspects of student housing before signing. International tenants may face additional challenges when renting in a new country. Without local credit history, landlords often require a co-signer who is a resident or citizen. This helps landlords feel secure renting to someone new to the area. International tenants and their co-signers should be aware of any special requirements or documentation needed for the application process. Many landlords now use online platforms for lease applications and co-signer verification. This can streamline the process, making it faster and more convenient for everyone involved. Co-signers may need to upload documents, complete digital forms, and sign electronically. It's important to use secure platforms and keep personal information safe throughout the process. Digital signatures are legally recognized in most places and are commonly used for lease agreements. Co-signers can sign documents electronically, making the process more efficient. It's important to verify the authenticity of digital signatures and ensure that all parties receive copies of the signed documents for their records. Co-signers must provide sensitive personal and financial information during the application process. It's important to ensure that this information is handled securely and only shared with authorized parties. Ask the landlord or property manager about their privacy policies and how your data will be protected. Protecting your privacy is an important part of the co-signing process. Unfortunately, rental scams and fraud can occur. Co-signers should be cautious and verify the legitimacy of the landlord and lease documents before providing any information or signing. Use reputable rental platforms. Avoid sending money to unknown parties, and trust your instincts if something feels off. Taking these precautions can help protect you from fraud and financial loss. To sum up, a co-signer on a lease is someone who agrees to share legal and financial responsibility for a rental property. Co-signers help tenants secure housing, provide landlords with added security, and take on significant risks in the process. Understanding the responsibilities, risks, and benefits of co-signing is essential for both tenants and co-signers. With the right knowledge and preparation, co-signing can be a positive experience for everyone involved. Before entering into a co-signing arrangement, take time to research, ask questions, and consult with professionals if needed. Make sure you fully understand the lease terms and your obligations. Open communication, careful documentation, and proactive financial management are key to a successful co-signing experience. Whether you're a tenant or a co-signer, being informed and prepared will help you navigate the process with confidence and peace of mind.